If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to Stars of the Golden Age, a show that highlights the lives of legends from film, music, and the birth of television during Hollywood's golden age and the few years surrounding it. I am your host, Erin Carlson. Today, we will be talking about Jeanne Eagels. This episode comes from a listener request. One of my Patreon members, Deborah B. Deborah suggested that I cover this often overlooked silent film and stage actress, and I happily took on the challenge. I also want to give a shout out to a new Patreon member. A huge thank you to Neely. Neely has been super supportive of the show, and I appreciate that so much. Neely, it's people like you who give me the drive to keep on going on those days when I wonder if it's even all worth all the work. Because let me tell you, it's a lot of work. But knowing that I have such valued listeners like Neely and the rest of you guys, it makes it all worth it. So thank you so much again, Neely. And I have one of Neely's requests coming up pretty soon on the show too. I'll give you a hint. His ears were often a hot topic. Now, on to Jeanne Eagels. I first want to acknowledge that there is a biopic film about Miss Eagles' life starring Kim Novak from 1957. I intentionally do not watch Hollywood biopics about the individuals I'm covering because they tend to mix in a lot of inaccuracies to make for a better story. So if you have seen that film and find some of my information to vary a little from it, it's because the movie may be a little sensationalized. I haven't seen it, but I do intend to watch it someday, having my research behind me now. My primary source for my research into Jeanne Eagles' life was what is considered the best of the best biographies of her life. A wonderful book titled Jeanne Eagles, A Life Revealed by Eric Woodard and Tara Hanks. But I am curious about the Kim Novak movie, so I will try to sneak that in soon. Jeanne Eagles was born as Amelia Eugenia Eagles on June 26, 1890, to parents Edward and Julia in Kansas City, Missouri. Jeanne was the second daughter for the couple. She had a sister about 3 years older than her. A little boy named Edward was born a few years later, but he sadly died when he was only 3 months old. Sister Helen was born when Jeanne was 7, and 2 more boys, Leo in 1898 and George in 1902. But wait, there's more! Julia gave birth to twin boys in 1907, but sadly only one of the boys survived. They named him Daniel. So that makes a total of 6 surviving children for Edward and Julia Eagles and a loss of 2 children. Edward Eagles was a carpenter, and Kansas City in the last decade of the 19th century was a pretty lucrative time and place to be in a building trade. The city was going through a substantial boom, and the Eagles family was there at just the right time to be a part of it. Jeanne was often what is called a tomboy as a child. She wasn't one to sit back in little frilly dresses and act curt and feminine while the boys got to have all the fun. She wanted to have all the fun too. She was adventurous and curious. Unfortunately, Jeanne wasn't always lucky in avoiding injury in her adventures. She fell and broke her arm pretty badly when she was 7 years old, and as you can imagine, broken bones weren't reset quite as well as they are today. This injury would cause Jeanne pain for the rest of her life. Jeanne Eagles' little feet first hit the stage in a children's production of Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream in the fall of 1901. She was 11 years old. She then played a gravedigger in a production of Hamlet. By the following year, after putting every ounce of her energy into her studies under Georgia Brown's acting school, Jeanne was given the role of Little Eva in Uncle Tom's Cabin. Jeanne Eagles, still very much a child, knew that a life on stage was her life's calling. She later said, quote, "Once I'd played in front of an audience, it was battle royale to keep me off the stage. I did all this in the face of pretty stiff family opposition, for the perfectly natural idea was that I ought to be going to school uninterruptedly." End quote. Jeanne never did really attend traditional school regularly, and now that she found her calling, she wasn't going to return. By 17 years old, Jeanne knew she had to broaden her horizons beyond Kansas City, Missouri. With the help of her acting teacher, Georgia Brown, she joined the Dubinsky Brothers' traveling repertory company. She began in the chorus, but was starring in lead roles within 3 months. She put in the hard work to make her way to the top. She knew success wasn't going to just fall in her lap. She needed to work for it. At 18, it is highly speculated that Jeanne married one of the Dubinsky brothers, Maurice, a marriage that obviously didn't last, if it ever did exist. Another rumor is that this relationship produced a baby that either died or was secretly passed on to a family outside of show business. All of that is clouded in mystery. Jeanne's father, Edward, by this time had been forced out of work too young due to poor health, rheumatoid arthritis, amongst other issues. Much of Jeanne's paycheck as an actress went home to help keep a roof over her family's heads. The once fortunate family was really struggling without Edward's income. Bad turned to worse for the family when on February 14th, 1910, Edward passed away. The youngest Eagles child, Daniel, was only 3 years old. Jeanne stayed home to help her mother after her father's passing, but after about 6 months, she began to get antsy for the stage. Only she decided it was time for bigger and better things in her acting career. She was going to reach for the best. First, Chicago, and then Broadway. Ironically, one of Jeanne's very first Broadway productions was The Pink Lady with leading lady Hazel Dawn. Patreon members may recognize this from my latest cocktail party episode over on Patreon. Jeanne also worked alongside Billy Burke in her first days in New York. And Billy Burke's famous husband, Flo Ziegfeld, offered a position in his Ziegfeld Follies to Jeanne, along with a $100 weekly salary, which would be $3,200 per week today. Not bad for a struggling actress. But Jeanne said no. I also just covered the history of the Ziegfeld Follies over on Patreon. Pink Lady Hazel Dawn began as a Ziegfeld girl. So Pink Lady the woman, Pink Lady the drink, the Ziegfeld girls, Ziegfeld Follies empire, all of that is available on Patreon if you want to go check it out. Well, Jeanne Eagles turned down the opportunity to join the Ziegfeld Follies, an opportunity most hopeful stars would jump at. She did this because she wanted to prove herself as a dramatic actress. She knew she needed to wait it out, put in the work, and the right opportunities would come. And they did. Not only on the stage, though, in motion pictures, too. Moving pictures were in their infancy when Jeanne Eagles first made the jump onto the silver screen. She continued to work her butt off in successful Broadway productions and did East Coast film work during her time off from the stage. Jeanne was very, very well received in everything she did. She put in the hard work, and she made herself a very talented and very well-respected actress. Even in not-so-well-received plays, Jeanne Eagles always carried the show and received stunning reviews for her performances. Reviews like this one from Billboard in reference to the 1920 play, The Wonderful Thing. Quote, "If The Wonderful Thing catches on, it will be due solely to the altogether delightful, utterly charming work of Jeanne Eagles. She has established herself firmly," end quote. Or this one from the Evening Post. Quote, "Animated, merry, generous, expressing the most attractive qualities in a delightful halting and mal-accented English, she was the life of the whole romantic melodrama. The play has palpable weakness of plot, characterization, and atmosphere, especially plot. But its 4 acts were so constructed that Miss Eagles was able to maintain the sparkle of her performance till the end." End quote. Jeanne Eagles believed so greatly in the power of hard work in achieving one's goals, and she practiced this every day of her life. But she often overworked herself, and our bodies are pretty good at letting us know when it's time to slow down. Jeanne tried to listen to these cues, but she was in pretty much back-to-back stage productions. She told a New York Tribune reporter in May of 1920, about a month shy of her 30th birthday, quote, "I have always been frail, and whenever I devote too much attention to ambition, health checks me up and sends me signals of warning, telling me unless I desist with my ambition, health, will cease to be my handmaiden. With health, one may obtain everything. Without it, nothing. Happiness I get in the theater and in my home. Health I find outdoors in the glorious sunshine and fresh air. Both are wonderful. Perhaps sometime I shall find love, but just now the wonderful thing is health." End quote. I love that quote. Wise, wise words. Without health, nothing. As for the love Jeanne was hoping to find, she had a few boyfriends here and there, the most significant up to this time being attorney Thomas Chadbourne. He was a recent widower and raising his stepson. His second wife, who had passed away, had a son from her first marriage. Although it appeared from the outside that the relationship between Jeanne and Thomas Chadbourne was a wonderful one that would quickly lead to the altar, Chadbourne wasn't really interested in taking that route. The truth was, he was more concerned about his social standing than being with the woman he loved. And the fact that the woman he loved was an actress threatened his reputation in his stuffy upper-class social circles. Thomas Chadbourne broke Jeanne Eagles' heart. Between her mental and physical exhaustion from constant performing and her emotional heartbreak over the ending of her relationship with Thomas Chadbourne, 30-year-old Jeanne Eagles decided to take a little me time. A 5-month vacation to England and France in the fall of 1920. Sounds amazing, doesn't it? Well, she made it 3 weeks. She received a telegram abroad about a play that she was wanted for, In the Night Watch. Considering the transatlantic ocean liner voyage was at least 5 days, times 2, poor Jeanne only got 10 or 11 days of true European vacation. Better than nothing, I guess. With the production of In the Night Watch, Jeanne was back to the non-stop grind. I should mention she was also very involved in various charities too. So charity events kept her very busy in what free time from work she did have. She was a very busy woman. I felt exhausted just reading about her schedule. Aside from the stress of constant work, Jeanne was also going through a little landlord drama during this same period of time. Her apartment building on West 57th Street near 5th Avenue in Manhattan was under new ownership, and the new owner wanted to capitalize on the building's location and turn the apartments into retail units. Jeanne's home, as she mentioned in that interview, was her safe place. the one place she found peace and calm and emotional contentment. She had put great thought into the way she decorated and furnished her apartment, and she didn't want to leave it. I want to quote from Eric Woodard and Tara Hanks' book, Jeanne Eagels, A Life Revealed, because they give a really good description of Jeanne's home and you get a sense of why it was so special to her. They wrote, quote, "She had devoted considerable time and money to her home, decorating it with turquoise wallpaper, mauve tapestries and curtains, furniture upholstered in lavender and robin's egg blue satin, complemented by a chaise lounge and heliotrope, and antique porcelain from the Conti dynasty," end quote. Jeanne told her new landlord that she would leave, but not for less than $25,000. In a counteraction, the landlord had the front entrance boarded up and the elevator disabled. Jeanne took the situation to the New York Supreme Court, which resulted in an order of protection against the building's owner, ordering him to open the entrance and enable the elevator, and seize any operations which threatened the, quote, "sanctity, peace, and comfort of Miss Eagles' dwelling," end quote. Ultimately, the landlord forked out some pretty big bucks to get Jeanne to leave her home. All of this added stress took a huge toll on Jeanne's mental and physical health. She crashed. And then she got influenza. Her body was telling her she needed to slow and calm down. She had no choice but to step down from night watch for several performances. Once well and through the 111 performances of night watch, Jeanne decided to try that European vacation again. This time, she was able to enjoy 2 months away. Shortly after this restful retreat in Europe, Jeanne Eagles was offered the role of a lifetime, the role she is best known for, Sadie Thompson in the production of Rain in 1922. As summarized by Britannica, Sadie Thompson was a, quote, "light-hearted American prostitute who plies her trade in the South Seas and causes the downfall of Reverend Mr. Davidson, a fanatical missionary," end quote. The role of Sadie Thompson was later portrayed on the silver screen by Gloria Swanson in 1928, Joan Crawford in 1932, and Rita Hayworth in 1953. But Jeanne Eagles was Sadie Thompson to her core. She is considered the very best Sadie Thompson. The 1922 production of Rain starring Jeanne Eagles ran for an impressive 4-year, 690 performance run. Many acting coaches, directors, and theater experts consider Jeanne's performance in Rain as one of the very best theatrical performances of the era. Director and co-founder of the prestigious Actors Studio, Robert Lewis, said over 30 years after Jeanne's run as Sadie Thompson, quote, "If any of you are old enough to have seen Jeanne Eagles in Rain, you will remember that the thing that made it wonderful was that the essential quality of the actress was a certain inner purity," end quote. Another Actors Studio icon, Lee Strasberg, said over 50 years later, quote, "One of the great performances of that time and my theater-going experience was that of Jeanne Eagles in Rain. No one seems to remember the inner, almost mystic flame which engulfed Eagles in the scene with the preacher. It seemed as if she had been brought up to some new dimension of being, so that when she found to her great shock and surprise that he was concerned with what she had left behind, her sense of loss and her disillusion were overwhelming," end quote. Jeanne Eagles had already been a popular and accomplished stage actress, but Rain made her a superstar. A year into her 4-year run with Rain, Jeanne found love again. It was reported in newspapers on November 2nd, 1923, that Jeanne Eagles was engaged to a man named Whitney Warren Jr. The Warrens were part of New York's high society too, just like Jeanne's last serious romance. Whitney didn't seem to mind marrying an actress, unlike Thomas Chadbourne, but his father sure did. When he learned of the engagement, Whitney Sr. booked a passage for his son on an ocean liner bound for Italy. A one-way ticket in which he hoped would sever this ridiculous desire to marry an actress. Well, Whitney Jr. apparently knew how to stand up for himself. He canceled the reservation and planted his feet down firmly on U.S. soil, where his love was. Well, for a while at least. His determined father bought him another ticket on another ship, this time on a 9-month voyage overseas. Whitney Warren Jr. did sail away on that ship. The relationship was over. Fancy pants, better than everyone, high society dad won. During her run with Rain, Jeanne described her life and a typical day in New York for her during that time. I found it really enjoyable to read, so I wanted to share it with you too. Here's what she said, quote, I have my own home there at 168 East 61st Street. Okay, sidebar, the fact that a major star would give their exact address, that is so crazy. Oh, how times have changed. Okay, back into the quote. It is run by 3 servants who seem to consider me in the light of a favorite child or something. I also have what would be described as a second home at the Maxine Elliott Theater where Rain ran. It consists of a suite of 3 rooms that are nominally listed under the severe title dressing room, but which really are as large as a fair-sized apartment. Passageways give off of it for my own entrances to the stage. My younger sister Helen lives with me in my home. I rise at 10 o'clock in the morning, rain or shine. Then comes the bath, breakfast, my mail, the morning papers, a talk with Helen. Noon and the early afternoon bring dressmakers, photographers, perhaps a girlfriend or so for a call. At 4 o'clock comes my big meal of the day, and I'm willing to confess right out in the open air that it is a big one. Then a bit of rest and to the theater early. 8:15 to 11 o'clock finds me in Rain. Then I go home with 1 or 2 of my friends for a supper at my house. This is as invariable as the 10 o'clock rising hour and the 4 o'clock meal. Then bed. End quote. This schedule would not work for me. I'm more of a 5:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. kind of girl. I love my early mornings. Jeanne was going to get down that aisle, though. She surprised everyone, including her own family back in Kansas City, when she married Wall Street financier and former Yale football star Ted Coy in August of 1925. I think she just really, really wanted to have love and compassion in her life, a partner to share her life with. More on Ted in a little bit. Now, though, let's shift over to Jeanne's film career. Rain did a West Coast tour in the spring and summer of 1926, and it was reported that motion picture producers were lined up at the train station, waiting to get their hands on Miss Jeanne Eagels. Maybe in hopes of a film rendition of Rain, or maybe just to lure Jeanne Eagels into the motion picture world for whatever they could get. This long 4-year run of Rain had really taken a toll on Jeanne's health, though. She had been plagued by several illnesses and was just plain exhausted. She did 1 more play after Rain, Her Cardboard Lover, and then she was signed to a contract with MGM in Hollywood in 1927. At the same time, United Artists was working on a film rendition of Rain, titled Sadie Thompson. And the world was shocked when Gloria Swanson was chosen to play the part of Sadie Thompson instead of Jeanne Eagels, who had made the character so popular on the stage for the past 4 years. This new contract with MGM, of course, wasn't Jeanne's first motion picture experience. Yes, she was first and foremost a stage star, but she had done those early film shorts on the East Coast during the 19-teens. But Hollywood was a whole different world than those early studios in New York and New Jersey. And MGM was the highest kingdom of this new world. MGM stars were the greatest of Hollywood royalty. And now Jeanne Eagles was right in the middle of that world. When asked about her transition from the stage back onto the screen, Jeanne Eagles said, quote, I have no doubt about my acting ability. My success on the stage has given me confidence along that line at least. But the technique of playing before a camera is entirely different from that used on stage. In the first place, one must use entirely different makeup for the Klieg's than the footlights. On the stage, a person's exact position is not vitally important. If you are in approximately the right spot, it is all right. But in front of a camera, especially for close-ups, you can't be over a fraction of an inch out of position. And you must be far steadier because the camera will detect things an audience won't." End quote. In short, performing in front of a camera and crew was a whole different type of acting than performing in front of a live audience on a stage. And the hours in a film studio were long and grueling. This was going to be quite an adjustment, and she wasn't completely sure that her heart was in it. Jeanne's first Hollywood movie for MGM was a film called Man, Woman, and Sin with John Gilbert in 1927. It was during the production of this movie where it came to light that Jeanne may be overindulging in alcohol and drugs. There were some difficulties reported on the set, including Jeanne abruptly taking off for 2 weeks for a little getaway in Santa Barbara, and missing work other days due to sickness. One very simple scene in particular took 30 takes for Jeanne to be able to complete. She simply couldn't speak clearly or coordinate her movements because she was allegedly drunk or high. She had reportedly been increasingly difficult to work with at times as her stage fame grew, but she seemed to be hitting a breaking point now that she was going through this stressful transition onto the silver screen. Ultimately, MGM didn't think Jeanne Eagles was worth the trouble of putting up with her difficulties and drug and alcohol struggles. They let her go from her contract after the filming of Man, Woman, and Sin. Back to the stage she went. Jeanne belonged on the stage. That's where her light shone the brightest. But even back in the theater, she was still fighting demons and going through some difficult times in her personal life. Her drug and alcohol use was still excessive, she was hit with frequent bouts of illness, and her marriage was not happy or healthy. Jeanne and Ted Coy separated in February of 1928 and were officially divorced that July, less than 3 years after they married. Coy said "I do" for the third time less than 1 month after his divorce from Jeanne Eagles. Wife number 3 was 21 years old, 19 years younger than he was. The combination of her crumbling marriage and the film role of Sadie Thompson being offered to Gloria Swanson led Jeanne to be teetering over the edge of the dangerous mental health cliff. And then the other major character she created on the stage, the role of Sally in Her Cardboard Lover, was being cast by MGM, the studio who treated her like a queen upon her arrival in Hollywood, only to toss her aside after one film. Like the role of Sadie Thompson that she had dominated on the stage and reigned for 4 years, she thought the role of Sally in Her Cardboard Lover belonged to her. But Marion Davies was cast in that role. Now, in Jeanne's defense, Marion Davies' boyfriend, William Randolph Hearst, was a heavy financier of the film. So that probably had a little something to do with the casting. Either way, this move was just too much for Jeanne, when piled up on all of the other disappointment and heartache she was forced to endure. Off the mental health cliff she goes. Jeanne was still starring on the stage with Her Cardboard Lover, but she disappeared into a self-imposed seclusion. The remainder of the tour had to be canceled. And with that, a lawsuit was brought against Jeanne Eagles by the Actors Equity. Jeanne's statement regarding this was this, quote, "I can never reconcile myself with such a management. They never gave me an understudy or anything. I have to take a much-needed rest, and I'm going to, whether they decide to punish me or not. Even if nobody pays for that rest but me, I'm going to take it. I'm worn out and tired." End quote. So in that quote, you can just feel that she is reaching a breaking point, that she is overworked and she is exhausted. In the end, Jeanne was suspended from performing in any union production for 18 months, and she was ordered to pay a fine of $36,000. Jeanne couldn't work in Actors Equity Union productions, but that didn't mean she couldn't work at all. And she wanted to work, once she was feeling better, that is. So she decided to form her own little vaudeville troupe. She could create the schedule herself and choose the types of acts and which actors she wanted to be involved with it. This power would allow her to have a better work-life balance and help to protect her mental health. Radio was also allowed, so she dabbled in that a bit too. And then, back to the silver screen. 1927 was a very exciting year for filmmakers and moviegoers because it brought the very first talking film, The Jazz Singer with Al Jolson. Studios scrambled to quickly catch up with this new technology and outfit their sound stages and equipment to be able to add vocal sounds to their films. Paramount had their first talking film all planned out, a film rendition of the stage play The Letter. Jeanne Eagles was chosen to play the lead in the motion picture, Paramount Pictures' very first talking film. Production for The Letter began on October 16, 1928. Jeanne's much talked about fiery disposition and difficulties on sets were anticipated by most people involved in the production of The Letter, but everyone seemed pleasantly surprised. She wasn't difficult, she wasn't unreliable, she wasn't drunk or high. In fact, Paramount was so impressed that they offered her a 3-year film contract. The Letter was met with rave reviews. The New York Telegram wrote, quote, "A performance that holds the spectator from first to last with compelling intensity," end quote. The New York Journal-American wrote, quote, "One of the most gorgeous portrayals ever caught upon the silver screen," end quote. Motion Picture News wrote, quote, "Jeanne Eagles proves herself as sterling an actress in this talking motion picture as she ever was on the stage, and the manner in which she portrays the role assigned her, despite its unsympathetic nature, will win her a host of admirers in the picture theaters," end quote. And the New York Daily News wrote, quote, "A most worthy debut for Jeanne Eagles as a talking actress. A most trying part. Tense, highly emotional throughout, leading up to a terrific climax in which Miss Eagles does a powerful, we even say magnificent, piece of work," end quote. There were dozens more reviews just as good as those ones. Jeanne's next movie with Paramount was Jealousy, but she was stricken with illness for much of the production, just as she had been during her stage run with Rain and Her Cardboard Lover. Not only that, but she was also dealing with a stalker. A 31-year-old man named Dale Efland was finally arrested after several incidents, and the contents of his pockets were highly alarming. He was arrested in Jeanne's apartment building, and it wasn't the first time he had been there. And within his clothing, police found a pocket knife, a kitchen knife, a fork, several razor blades, and a piece of heavy cord. Efland confessed to the police that he had been waiting for Jeanne every single night at her apartment building. He was sentenced to 10 days of observation at a mental health facility, followed by 6 months at a work camp. As Paramount carefully planned out their next big hit starring Jeanne Eagles, and without the option to return to Broadway in the interim, Jeanne was able to actually take some time to rest her body and mind. In the fall of 1929, she began seeing a psychiatrist to help heal her, quote, nervous disorder. Hopeful for her future treatment and recovery, Jeanne decided to go out on the town one evening shortly after she began seeing Dr. Cowles. She dolled herself up in a stunning evening gown and accessorized with several rings, including a 7.5-carat diamond ring and a pearl ring said to be the size of a penny. I mean, that just sounds uncomfortable. By 7 o'clock that evening, October 3rd, 1929, Jeanne was experiencing some pretty concerning health symptoms. Her maid acted quickly and brought her to Dr. Cowell's private practice at 591 Park Avenue in New York City. But it was 60 blocks away. They finally made it there, though, and Jeanne removed her fur coat before sitting on the bed to await her exam from Dr. Cowell's assistant, Dr. Pellegrini. With little warning, with Dr. Cowell's nurse by her side, Jeanne started going into terrifying convulsions. The nurse, Jenny Hoagland, hurried into the hall calling for Dr. Pellegrini. She found him quickly, but by the time they returned to the room, Jeanne was unconscious. It was worse than that, though. Much worse. At just 39 years old, Jeanne Eagles was dead. The medical examiner initially ruled Jeanne Eagles' cause of death as alcoholism and an overdose of a strong sedative called chloral hydrate. He said that her years of excessive drinking had sent her liver into failure and sent the toxins to her brain. Already severely compromised, the overuse of the sedative was too much for her body to handle. Jeanne's exact cause of death would be debated for decades, and still is. Some newspapers reported that she died from a heroin overdose, some from alcoholism, some from an overdose of chloral hydrate. Another important thing to consider is that Jeanne's doctor, psychiatrist and neurologist Dr. Edward Cowles, was known for a special treatment he would give to his patients. A mysterious elixir that he just described as, quote, a mixture of 3 or 4 ingredients common as household remedies, end quote. This secret potion was prescribed to relax the nerves of his patients. Jeanne Eagles' body lay at the Campbell Funeral Home at 66th and Broadway, the same place where the body of Rudolph Valentino's body was laid out for viewing a few years prior. Jeanne was dressed in a beautiful peach-colored evening gown with matching wrap and was laid in an elegant silver and bronze casket. Large floral arrangements had been sent from all of the most powerful people in Hollywood and on Broadway. An estimated 3,000 fans and friends came to pay their respects. Jeanne's estate was valued at quite a bit, a net worth of $58,000, which in today's money would be almost $2 million. But during her entire career, she earned $2 million, which would be $37.7 million today. She loved living the high life. She loved elegant, beautiful things. She worked hard for her money, and she loved to spend it on a life filled with the things that she loved. She left behind expensive furs, including one ermine fur coat worth $2,500 or $47,000 today. She had a fancy car, and she had that exquisite jewelry that she was adorned with when she died. The diamond ring was worth $4,000 at the time, and the huge pearl ring was worth $3,000 in 1929. Her estate was shared amongst her family, so Jeanne was able to show her love for them even after she was gone. I want to read a passage written about Jeanne after her death by syndicated columnist O.O. McIntyre. I thought it really summed up her life and her spirit well as the decline of that once bright spirit. It read, quote, Jeanne Eagles burst up her 12 years on Broadway and wound up the customary scorched butterfly. She had lived dangerously by choice and to the end. In the beginning, she was a puffball temperament, and then she grew brittle. There were few more beautiful or capable actresses than she. In the past 2 years, her piquancy was striked with a degree of hardness. I saw her 2 weeks before the end at a theater. Her hair was wild and frowsy, her eyes bright pinpoints, and her complexion a deathly oyster pallor. Yet, with it all, she retained a remarkable beauty and was beloved by many. End quote. So that is a little harsh, but you kind of get an idea of what people saw at the end of her life. Many friends and colleagues publicly shared their condolences after Jeanne's death, and they all had lovely things to say about her. Her famous friends stood up for her legacy and cleared up any misconceptions about her alcohol abuse. They wanted the world to know that yes, she drank, but she never drank before a performance. She was a professional through and through. She was an artist, and she treated her art very seriously. Jeanne Eagles' long run on the stage as Sadie Thompson in Rain is still considered to be one of the best portrayals ever performed on a Broadway stage. And now I would like to share just a couple of other things I learned during my research. Bullet point number 1. Jeanne Eagles was the first person to be nominated for an Academy Award posthumously. She was nominated for 1929's The Letter, which I can't wait to watch. Deborah, who suggested I cover Miss Eagles, said it is a fantastic film. So Patreon members, I'll definitely be doing it as a movie of the month sometime. Bullet point number 2. Speaking of The Letter, it was remade in 1940 with Bette Davis as the star. In conclusion, Jeanne Eagles had so much more to give the world, but was sadly taken much, much too soon. Whatever the official cause of her death, I think it's safe to say that her struggling mental health played a pretty big role in the decline of her overall health, and eventually her passing. Jeanne Eagles believed so strongly in the power of hard work. This is something that I feel we need as many reminders of today as we can get. We live in a world where so many people feel entitled to have fame or success or fortune or the material life they want without putting in the hard work to achieve it. I wholeheartedly believe that you can achieve the life you want for yourself if you are willing to put in the hard work. I struggle to even use the word hard there, because if it is something you truly love, it's not that hard. It's time-consuming, yes. But if you love what you are doing, it doesn't have to be hard. Trust me, I know. If we all find that thing or things that we love, the career path we are passionate about, then putting in the work is easy. But it does take work to succeed. I wish Jeanne Eagles could have had more fulfillment in her life outside of the theater. I think she really wanted a wholesome love, a partner to share her life's dreams with, someone to share her daily life with, to see the world with. It's sad to think what might have been with the two men who were ripped away from her due to a silly thing like social class. True love is hard to find, and maybe one of those two men could have been it for her, and her whole life could have been different. Maybe she could have lived a longer, more fulfilling life. Maybe she could have become a great star of the silver screen. But we'll never know. Jeanne Eagles said this at one point during her adult life. Quote, "Personally, the stage has been my life. It is all that I know. It is my work, everything on earth to me. The average girl's life is divided into her babyhood, her childhood, her school days, her married life, or her work. I have known nothing like that. Every fiber of my being and life has been devoted towards working towards a stage success. If I have made it, who will say I have not earned it?" End quote. Yes, Miss Eagles, you had made it. And yes, you definitely earned it. Thank you, Jeanne Eagles, for reminding us to show up, put the work in, and be proud of our accomplishments. Hard work really does pay off. But it sadly sometimes comes with some personal consequences as well. Thank you, Jeanne Eagles. And thank you all for listening. Now I would like to share a review of the week. This review is from Spotify user Mountain Cat Joe in reference to my Patsy Kelly episode, who said, quote, "Thank you so much for the bio on Patsy. It was fascinating and somewhat heartbreaking. She was a tremendous talent and human being," end quote. Thank you so much, Mountain Cat Joe, for taking the time to drop a comment, and thank you for listening to the show. I really enjoyed learning so much about Patsy Kelly. She was one remarkable woman. Thank you again so much. If you want to hear your review on the show, drop a review on Apple Podcasts or comment on one of my episodes on Spotify. Thank you again, Deborah, for this wonderful recommendation. And I promise The Letter will be one of our movie of the months over on Patreon very soon. And thank you to all of you. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so much. Have a great week. My primary source for this episode was a book titled Jeanne Eagels, A Life Revealed by Eric Woodard and Tara Hanks, Britannica.com, and IMDb.